Welcome back to my jQuery crash course, lesson number 3, and in today's video I'm going to be going over events. So here we have different elements, and each of these elements has different events. So for the H1, what we have to do is to hover it, and we can see that it disappears. For this one, we have to click it. This one, we have to double click it. And for this one's pretty interesting. We first have to have our mouse over it and then unhover it. So let me show you that again. I'm going to go down here. We have to first hover it and then unhover it. So these are going to be the basic events, and make sure that you watch this whole video so you don't miss any of them. And before we actually get started, make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new important videos or lessons on jQuery or any other topic. So to add an event, we first have to add a few elements or at least one element in our HTML file. So let's do that. I'm going to create a button with an ID of btn, and then the text I'm going to say click me, and let's actually do click btn because this is going to be the event listener. So on click, then something is going to happen, right? So this is going to be the name of the event. Now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's select our button first. So to select it, we have to use the jQuery or define jQuery with the money sign here, round brackets, and then it had a class of click btn. And so after we've selected our button here, what we have to do now is we have to define the event. So the event in our case, or in this case, is going to be click. So we're going to right click here, and then we're going to use the round brackets, and then inside of it, we're going to create a function. And this would be equivalent to writing document.query selector, and then .click btn .add event listener, click, and then creating the function, and then opening it. So we can see that the jQuery one is a lot shorter because we selected a lot quicker by using the money sign to define jQuery and then selecting it here. So this part. And then after, we can see that we have to add an event listener, and then here we define what kind of event. And then so here, we don't have to write the add event listener part, we just define the type of event, which is click. So we can see that jQuery makes it a lot easier for us to write code, and it makes it shorter. So now, to make sure that it works, let's console log this. So click, and I actually think I made a mistake. Yep, so it's an ID, and that's not a class, so change this to an ID. And if I reload this and click it, it doesn't work. And that's because the script loads before all of our elements in the HTML. So it basically looks for it, it adds the element listener, but the element doesn't exist at that time. So we could just put it at the bottom of the body so that the script loads after the button. And so now when we reload and then click it, we can see that it works. And so now we're going to go over different event listeners. So I'm going to create another button, and the name of this event listener is going to be dblclick, and then btn. And this one we're going to just right click u2. And what dbl stands for is basically double. So we have to double click for the event to work. So I'm going to write double click for this one. Now we're going to go back to our JavaScript file, and we're going to select our second button. This one has an ID of dblclick btn. Now we're going to add the class, so dblclick, create the function, and now we're going to console log double click. And so if we click our button once, we can see that we don't get it, but if we double click it, then we get our console log. And now moving on to the next event, which is going to be on mouseenter. So btn, it's actually not on mouseenter, but it's mouseenter btn, like this. So mouseenter. And this one is mostly used for other elements that are not buttons. You'll see why in a second. So let's select it. ID mouseenter btn dot mouseenter, create the function, round brackets, curly brackets, and now I'm going to console log hover, and you'll see why. So now if I have my mouse hover the button, we can see that the event listener works. So basically this one is used for things like paragraphs or other things, and it's kind of like the hover effect for CSS, but for JavaScript. So you could do different things like on hover, we can do something like, let's select it again, and then we can do hide like this. So when we hover it, it disappears and it stays like that because we don't have one that would do the opposite. And that brings us to the other event listener, which is actually going to be called mouseleave. So we can use it on this one too. And we're going to write mouseleave. And we're going to change this to show. So when we hover it, we can see that it disappears. And then when I have a mouse leave it, then it appears again. So let's actually see what happens if I just do this. And then we can change this to hide. So when we however, nothing happens, but then when I leave, it disappears. And that's because I haven't set the default value to that. So you can use it for things like that. And then there's obviously other things you can use it for, but I'm not going to go over it right now. And so these are going to be all the events I'm going to go over in this video. So you can take a screenshot of this so you can use it later. But what I will do now is I'll actually delete all the buttons and I want to show you something pretty cool. So I'm going to change all of these class or ID names to the name of it without the button. And what I will do is actually create a paragraph for the first one, set the ID to click. All right, click me. Now we can see that when we click the paragraph, the event listener works. So that means that we can add event listeners to elements that are not buttons. So let's create a span now. I want to set the ID to dblclick, and I'm going to write double click here. So now if we double click, we can see that it works. And let's actually use this a bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each of these elements and then I'm going to hide them every time the event runs. There we go. So now if I click this, it disappears. And if I double click the span, it also disappears. So let's try another element. So I'm going to use an H1 here. And let's use mouseenter. So the ID, I'm going to set it to mouseenter, and then I'm going to write hover me. So if we hover the H1, we can see that it disappears. And for the mouseleave, this one doesn't work as well as the others, but for this one, I'm going to use a paragraph too. ID, and then I'm going to use hover and unhover me. So now we have to hover it first and then unhover for this to work. Let's see why it doesn't work. There we go. So now if I hover this and then I unhover it, we can see that it disappears and we can see that everything else works perfectly well. And so this is going to be for this video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, then leave a like, sub to the channel for more content like this. Leave a comment down below if you have any video requests or questions on this video. And make sure that you watch my next lessons on jQuery so you don't stay behind. And hopefully see you in the next video.